Welcome to the Grow Down on Soil Health. I'm your host, Dr. Ben West, Executive Director of Farmers for Soil Health. And today I'm sitting down with someone who's made a real name for himself in North Carolina agriculture. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff Chandler.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So Jeff, you and I met 3-4 years ago as Farmers for Soil Health was getting started. Really enjoyed getting to know you. Really appreciate your perspectives and can't wait to dig into some of your thoughts about agriculture and conservation. But first, I want to talk a little bit about one of your hobbies, and that is perusing Facebook Marketplace for interesting old cars.
Yeah, there's always some finds on Marketplace.
Yeah. So what's your favorite? What are you looking for? I'd love to look back and look at the pickup trucks that my dad drove when I was a 10 or 12-year-old, which was, early 80s models.
Yeah.
I love those. Those remind me of being a kid.
That's right. My favorite thing to look for on Marketplace, in addition to, I'm always looking at farm machinery and stuff, but my favorite thing really is looking at old Chevy pickups. And I'm saying from my point of view, being old Chevy pickups to me is like the ones that were coming out when I started driving.
Well,
and so 80s, 90s, especially the 90s, that body style is my favorite, but it's my absolute favorite era of pickups and all General Motors, Chevy, and GMC trucks.
Well, Jeff, my first vehicle was a 1979 Chevy Silverado step-side.
Yeah.
Blue with a white racing stripe down the side.
Was it Hawaiian blue by chance?
It was. Absolutely it was. Yeah. So you ever pulled the trigger on any of these? Have you bought any?
No, I haven't. So I'm just looking for the right one to buy. I want to restore one from that era, bring it back to original condition. And
you got a specific year, model, color?
I'm looking specifically for a 1995 Chevy half-ton, two-wheel drive, regular cab, long bed. That I can deluxe two-tone. That's important. I got to get the two-tone paint. I always love the two-tone paint schemes. So that's what I'm looking for. I've got a 95 model now that might be a candidate for that, but I'm kind of holding out to see if I can find something that's a little better candidate for a full restoration.
Yeah, I've never been a car guy, but I do love those old trucks. I drove one recently, and it was really cool, but I thought, man, I miss power windows and power locks. You forget how quickly you quickly forget what it used to be like.
Yeah, and my wife picks on me now about that because I tell her, I said, I'm gonna go get my old truck out of the barn and I'll put it in the Christmas parade this year. It's a 95 model. And she's like, oh my God, don't do that. Nobody wants to see that. I said, well, it's just not old enough yet. When it's old enough, it'll be cool again.
Yeah, that's right. 95 doesn't sound very old, but it's 30 years old now.
That's right.
Well, really appreciate you joining. Obviously, you do work in agriculture in North Carolina. You're a technical advisor for Farmers for Soil Health in North Carolina, and you work for the North Carolina Soybean Producers Association as a research coordinator. So pretty deep into soybeans these days, but you've got a much more diverse background than that in agriculture. Tell us a little bit, how did you get into agriculture?
Some of my background in the industry, grew up on a family farm in North Carolina, sort of in the south central Piedmont area of the state, and we were a diversified family farm like so many. Row crop producers, corn, cotton, soybeans, wheat. Also had beef cattle, so we were diversified into both crops and livestock. Went to college originally to pursue a degree in animal science and later got into poultry science, and that led to a graduate degree in crop science. So I started diversifying my educational background through that experience. But that was my roots in agriculture, was the family farm, and because we were diversified, I had a lot of interest in different topics and a lot of different aspects of agricultural production. So that's how I started out, and then began working with Extension right out of college as a county agent.
Oh, yeah.
And I always remember I did a 4-H cumulative record when I was in high school. It was in a beef project, and on the front page of that, it asks you, what do you want to do for your career? I was 17 years old or whatever when I filled that out, and I distinctly remember writing in, I want to be a livestock agent. because we had depended on our local extension agents a lot, and that's what I wound up doing for that. That had a big influence on me and our family. So started out doing that, and then was working in research station operations. Mm-hmm. In most of my career in North Carolina has been spent in agricultural research, working with a diversity of crop and animal systems throughout the state.
Yeah, you and I have similar backgrounds in that way. My background's conservation, but my pathway to that was through 4-H programs.
Right.
And, then went to graduate school for a long time, went to school longer than my parents thought someone could go to school. But finally, got out and spent 10 years as an extension specialist. And what a great organization. And it'd be interesting if we could ever really know how many people today are alive that are doing whatever passion, whatever work they're doing because of experiences in 4-H.
Sure. Yeah. It's around us every day. Sometimes we don't realize the impact that and FFA have had on folks when they growing up.
Yeah. So how'd you make that segue from extension to getting into broader based ag research? And then spanning from animal science and livestock to row crop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had the background, of course, from our family farm and row crop production, even though I was working as a livestock agent for extension. But at that time, I was in an area of the state working in eastern North Carolina where there was a research station in the county where I was the extension agent. So in the process of developing a good relationship with the research station and kind of coming to a better understanding of what they did, and that led to me taking a job with the research station, first working with their livestock units, and then that led to another advancement opportunity to go to another site where I was a superintendent that was totally a crop station and had horticultural crops. My first exposure to horticultural crops was at that research station, and so that kind of forced that branching of my perspectives and skill sets by moving to a different site and learning a new aspect of agriculture.
Yeah, and it's a family affair. Your brother works in agriculture, your kids. Yeah, so tell us about your larger family.
Okay, yeah. My brother, I have an older brother who's a veterinarian, so he went the path of going to vet school, and now, looking back, I've spent most of my career working in the crop production side, and my brother had the same, of course, experience growing up and influences that I did, but he became a veterinarian and is now operating a clinic of his own in eastern North Carolina, so has done very well with that. My 4 children, some of which are involved in agriculture, have pursued interest in agriculture. My oldest son's actually working. He graduated from NC State last year in agronomy. He came through the crop science department, and so it's kind of cool that he graduated from the same department I did at NC State. And now he's working for Pioneer up in Central Illinois now in research and development. So he's working in ag research in private industry. My second son is not working in ag, but he's in Charlotte in sales for home renovations and remodeling. But my daughter's got an interesting position right now. She's a chemical engineering major at NC State, and she's doing a co-op right now with Nutrien at a phosphate mine down in eastern North Carolina. We have a very large phosphate mine operation for Nutrien. So she's working in the lab there doing chemical laboratory things as part of that process. And then our youngest son's a senior in high school. He loves animals. He's very interested in animals. I don't know what he'll wind up pursuing for a career field, but he's currently working at our local farm supply store and also feeds calves at our local dairy. It's the last dairy we have in our home county, but he works there part-time as well.
Yeah, so you've got you and your family. I mean, you just got a very broad experience in agriculture. I've seen lots of different pieces of the industry. But I know you, and I know what drives you the most is working with the people that work in agriculture and working with farmers to help them make their operations more successful. So tell us a little bit about that. Yeah, I know you work with farmers every day in the work that you do now.
Absolutely. That's a great way of describing that, is that really really, I work in a relationship business. You know, the relationships we have with people to support farmers, and that is truly a passion that I have, to work with farmers, help them meet their goals, help them identify what steps are necessary to achieve whatever it is they need to achieve for their operation, and make myself available to help them through that process and help them along the way. But what I have found in my experiences over the years is that people are reluctant to maybe ask for that help if they don't have confidence in you. You don't have that trust in somebody. So really, I want to try to get to know people first, build relationships, and with that mutual trust that comes out of a personal connection or relationship with people, then I'm in a better position to advise them on practices.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was in a group this week on something completely different, but we were talking about personal relationships and technology. I mean, technology has changed so much how we work, whether it's, you know, just simple things like email to AI, and some people see that as, you know, the value of personal relationships being diminished. I actually think that it makes it more important. Right. At the end of the day, personal relationships are what makes things happen in the world. And your work with farmers, developing those personal relationships, I know opens the door to be able to talk about things like cover crops and other conservation strategies.
Sure. Yeah, it's one of the true joys of my work in my career has been working with farmers to ensure their success, to meet their objectives, and like I say, working through those relationships to provide resources, guidance, reflection sometimes for them with questions they might have, and be able to provide that to them.
Well, we're going to keep digging in with Jeff on some of these topics, but first I want to tell everyone, especially the farmers listening, about the Farmers for Soil Health program. It's a program established by farmers for farmers. It's dedicated to improving soil health practices like cover crops to enhance the environment and the profitability of farmers. Through this podcast, which is in partner with the Soy Checkoff, the Pork Checkoff, and the National Corn Growers Association, we dig deep into sustainable farming practices. We're bringing you tangible, experience-based, and research-backed information that can help you enhance your land and your bottom line. If you're enjoying this episode so far, you should check out several of our others. Some have already been posted and others to come. But Jeff, let's talk about sustainability a little bit. You know, sustainability is a relatively new word in agriculture. 15 or 20 or 30 years ago, the word was conservation. Before that, it was probably something else. And as I talk with farmers and others, oftentimes they ask, well, is this just a buzz? Is this a fad, this whole sustainability thing? The word may be a fad, but I don't think the practices are going anywhere, because at the end of the day, we still have 2 or 3 billion more people coming on our planet, and we're going to have to feed, clothe, shelter, and energize them, power them and their lives with less water, less land. And the only way it seems like we're going to do that is to double down on these long-standing and new conservation practices. So can you talk about, you know, your career in agriculture? Talk a little bit about how you see where sustainability or conservation practices and work has been and where it's going.
Yeah, it's a great point to bring up, and happy to discuss that with you here on the podcast. As you're thinking about sustainability, whatever, you know, conservation practices, whatever, such as cover crops as one example of that, one of the big things I've observed over the last several years, and it being, as you said, this is not a new concept. We've called it a lot of different things, but it's certainly not a new concept or way of thinking about conserving our natural resources, protecting things for the future. But I definitely have seen a groundswell of interest and excitement over implementing practices in recent years. And I think it has become more of a mainstream concept rather than a niche concept with some different groups and farmers as they're considering adopting different practices. I mean, go back to the 80s, we implemented practices on our farm like grass waterways and terraces and no-till planting and things like that. But, it wasn't widespread. You didn't see it broadly adopted, and I'm kind of, and it is today, those types of practices. So my point with cover crops is that I have witnessed more and more interest and inquisitive approaches to cover crop adoption across farms in North Carolina, and I think that holds true across the country.
Yeah, and you're right. Farmers have been concerned with conservation forever, at least since the Dust Bowl. Right. I mean, it's been a serious point of conversation in agriculture, and we have made, as you've said, a tremendous amount of progress. Where I live in West Tennessee, and we've got 95% no-till adoption in that region just because the soils there are so erosive. To be able to do any agriculture there, we got to conserve soil. So we've made a tremendous amount of progress. But we still have a lot of progress to go. We're in Missouri right now as we speak. We're at a Farmers for Soil Health event. We went out on a tour this morning, and I really took note of one of the speakers this morning who suggested that in Missouri they've lost 50% of their topsoil the last 100 years, and of those 50% of the topsoils that are left, they've lost 70% of their organic matter. I mean, obvious, those are soils that took hundreds of thousands of years to form, and if we've lost 50% of them in 100 years, it's a real serious issue. So we've done a lot of great things. As you look into your crystal ball over the next 10, 20, 30 years, where do you think we're going in conservation and agriculture, and row crop agriculture especially?
Well, Ben, as I think about the future of row crop agriculture specifically and other agricultural enterprises, but we'll focus on row crop agriculture with this response, we have to conserve what we have. You mentioned the loss of topsoil here in Missouri that was commented on the tour this morning. That's absolutely true. It's so cliche to talk about, trying to do more with less and what we're going to be able to do in the future with resources that are available. I look at that in two different components. One, we got to make sure that our soil health is optimized in a way that it can support productivity that's economically sustainable for the farm. But we're also going to have less available land area for those production practices to be implemented on. I think just as a developing country and as we continue to grow as a society over the next 2-3 decades, that's going to become more and more of a constraint, is what available land is there for the farmers to have access to. So it is, again, more incentive to me that every acre I'm farming is as productive and as sustainable as possible, and I can help protect that through implementing soil health practices like cover crops.
Yeah, absolutely. And, farmers, almost every farmer wants to do the best for their land that we can. We've got improvements to be made, but it's incumbent upon us through science and through good education to give them the tools that they need, that they're going to need to do that. So maybe last question to wrap us up here. You lead the research program for soybean industry in North Carolina. Where do you see the future of research coming? Like, what are the big questions that you think we really need to get our minds wrapped around to further accelerate adoption of many of these practices? Cover crops is certainly one. It's a focus of Farmers for Soil Health, but also things like filter strips or reduced tillage or other soil health and conservation practices. What do we need to know that we don't know now?
Well, certainly I think we've got more to learn about ROI and can we associate an economic benefit, or how to demonstrate an economic benefit to these practices. We feel like it's economically viable. We've shown that in limited aspects, but there's so much more to learn. And as you know, there's there's so many different variables with circumstances and environments around the country to be able to do that. But it starts with, I think, with economics. The economics help pave the way for changing mindsets, and the change in mindsets is really what's going to drive adoption of cover crops and other sustainability practices in the future. But you got to be economically confident in that first, that's going to work out. And then once you see the results, I think most farmers will understand that this is better for their farm, better for their land. The other thing you mentioned about research developments, AI is something certainly that we're seeing more and more investment in. We're making more investments in that at the state level with the North Carolina Soybean Producers Association. So that's an area that we'll continue to exploit for data management, and how can we mine data for decision-making tools is going to be a very important part of our future in agriculture as I see it.
So, Jeff, that's really good conversation about the future, and I think the future is bright but still uncertain. Let's talk about right now, today, because cover crops are a practice that lots of farmers are using today, and you and I both know farmers who would say if they didn't have that tool, they don't know. I don't know if they could. They don't know if they could farm.
Right.
So it's become such an important part of their operation. What do we need to do to help other farmers see that and give them the tools? What do we need to do to help other farmers adopt cover crops?
Well, Farmers for Soil Health is a cover crop incentive program, and that certainly makes it an attractive choice to have some financial incentive for adopting cover crops. If you've not grown cover crops before, it's something to help entice you to take a look at that and cushion the financial implications, because there is some cost associated with planting a cover crop. I think we need to acknowledge that there are costs associated with planting a cover crop. And I think for some people, that's a barrier to implementation, is additional labor or equipment or time in the fall of the year during the harvest season is something else you got to do. And to help lessen the impact of that, it's nice to have a financial incentive associated with a program like Farmers for Soil Health. So that's one thing, as we get into that part of it, as somebody considers a cover crop. The other thing that I have found to be very influential with farmers is hearing from other farmers about their practices and why they grow cover crops, what works for them on their farms. Some of the farmers, Ben, that I work with in North Carolina that have been using cover crops for a number of years, they tell me that they need to plant cover crops on their farm, and they see that as such an intrinsic value to their operation because of their productivity has been improved as a result of the cover crops. Now, that may depend on what region of the state that's in. That could be a water quality or water management consideration. It could be a weed management consideration, just improving the overall soil health on their fields. So it does vary a little bit in their responses from different parts of the state, but consistently they tell me that cover crops are an integral part now of what they're doing. Those are the people that I want to make available to other farmers to get them in conversations together so they can share experiences. How are you doing this? How are you dealing with termination? Have you thought about the cost of your species selection and seeding rates and all of these variables that you're faced with when you're first considering implementing cover crops? Well, there's other farmers and your neighbors that maybe have already done that and can be a great help to you. So I see my biggest benefit to farmers as a TA is in, let's get them connected with not just the research-based information I can share with them, but what are other farmers doing? Let me get you connected with a farmer that's already doing it and share their experiences with you.
Yeah, it's just like we were talking about earlier. All the technology, all the data, all the science that is out there and increasing exponentially every year. At the end of the day, what influences people the most are the relationships of other people around them. And I think of all the work you do, Jeff, connecting people in that way so that they can hear from other people like them and hear their experiences is probably the most important thing that you do. And we really appreciate that work that you're doing for us and for farmers and for Farmers for Soil Health.
Well, thank you very much.
So everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Grow Down on Soil Health. And again, Jeff, thanks for joining us today. If this conversation felt like your kind of talk and your kind of information, make sure to rate our podcast, follow us on social media, and check out our website, farmersforsoilhealth.com. And most of all, stay tuned here for more insights on sustainable farming practices. Until next time.